Hey everyone, I'm Janice Davis, and this is MMORPG.com's The List. RPG gamers jump at the chance to sink their teeth into big, sprawling, single-player games that epitomize this genre. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is such a game. The Witcher 3 is an excellent achievement for our industry and is a landmark game in the legacy of Western RPGs. Along with Dragon Age Inquisition and Pillars of Eternity, a new standard is being created for storytelling and immersion in role-playing games, and it's an extremely exciting time to be a gamer. With all of that excellence, naturally come lessons that can be applied to other areas of the industry, such as our beloved RPG sister genre, MMORPGs. So here's the top 5 things MMOs can learn from The Witcher 3.
Number 5. Visceral Combat. Real-time, action-based combat on the level of The Witcher 3 isn't possible for most or possibly any MMOs. However, that doesn't mean there aren't a few cues from the system that developers could notate. Having to focus and do things like counter and move and dodge during combat is a big upgrade from the rhythm-based button presses of past Witcher games and the stand and rotate skill bar combat of 99% of MMOs. It makes the sword combat not only stand out, but also really interesting. Take that a step further, though, and upgrade magic and ranged combat to be about more than just pointing and clicking. Preparing spells ahead of time, much like in the glory days of EverQuest, would be a nice throwback for added strategy. Or at least embracing and expanding on the concept of a limited skill bar. These are just some ideas on ways MMO developers could make combat even more visceral and engaging. Number 4. Deep exploration. This is probably the hardest item on the list to quantify and measure, but just making the game more explorable and more interesting to explore always helps. In a game like Darkfall Unholy Wars, the gamer has the option to run out and explore the world, but may not want to given how empty some areas feel. But with the Elder Scrolls Online, on the other hand, it's rewarding to strike out on one's own and see what lies beyond the horizon. Elder Scrolls Online doesn't nail this perfectly, of course, but it's a good starting point of discussion. Throwing in random encounters, putting areas into the game that aren't necessarily tied to quests and special events, and making the world a living and breathing place that asks to be seen and experienced would be even more engaging. Number 3. Good minigames. Other than a lot of the awesome and mostly player-ran stuff a player could find in Star Wars Galaxies and City of Heroes, there seems to be a bit of a lack in awesome minigames for MMOs. Jumping puzzles in Guild Wars 2, great, but that's not really the same thing. Pet battles in World of Warcraft, cool, but probably not something you can spend a considerable amount of time doing. Gwent, on the other hand, the card game in The Witcher 3, is deserving of its own standalone release. It's that good. Gwent succeeds at being so interesting simply because it's a well-designed and fun-to-play card game. There aren't any intrusive or fancy tie-ins to the game itself other than it exists, and people enjoy it. The quality of the game speaks for itself. If MMO developers could create something similar and make it fun and worth investing time into, they'd be onto something great. Plus, for a free-to-play title, it could bring in extra revenue for the game. Number 2. Mature content. For this list, the mature content we're referring to is not the Scarlet Blades brand of maturity, but rather along the lines of gritty realism, harsh environments, and ruthless characters and violence. The closest thing to a truly mature MMO that gamers often refer to is Age of Conan, but even that isn't quite the same as what's on display in the world of The Witcher. Tasteful and effective mature content is hard to describe. It's just one of those things that you know and appreciate when you see it done correctly. Dragon Age Inquisition isn't an overly mature game, but it feels like a much more mature experience than any of the Elder Scrolls games, despite the shared ESRB rating of M. It's about not only the combat and sexuality, but the writing and events that happen, the choices you make, the characters you interact with, the world you live in. The Witcher 3, for all its fantastical elements and crazy monsters, is one of the most realistic depictions of the brutality of humanity in games. And number 1, subtle choice and consequence. Witcher 3 manages to keep the game elements from being too intrusive. Morality systems in games are great, and gamers like knowing that their choices are having an effect on the world. But when those choices are reflected with an arbitrary type point system, it gets tricky, much like real life would if that were the case. An MMO that takes these cues and creates a world where nothing is black and white, where virtually everything sits in this huge void of gray right in the middle of what's right or wrong, would be pretty cool. Rather than NPCs existing as a depository for quest items and a node to receive updates and information, actual personalities would make them stand out dramatically. If a gamer helps an NPC succeed in a task that may have repercussions for someone else in the future, or may have repercussions right now, well, above all else, it made things really interesting.
Well, there we have it. The top 5 things we think MMOs could take away from The Witcher 3. What are your thoughts? We'd love to hear about your Witcher experiences and the valid points you think the game could offer other genres. I'm Janice Davis for MMORPG.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you online in the next realm.
Make sure to level up your MMO knowledge by visiting MMORPG.com, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and by following us on social media. To catch up on the week's biggest MMO news, watch our latest MMO FTW. And to see if there's a better MMO out there for you, watch one of our latest First Impressions videos. Thanks for watching.